Football Frenzy. It's presented by Pub Sports Radio. Glad to be with you guys here for another Thursday, a football Thursday, breaking down NFL Week 4 and a little college football. I know we've been tight for time, and it's because of me yapping and flapping my gums as much as I do, which I'm pretty good at, actually. And the reason is sometimes it cuts our time short for breaking down college football, but I promise we will get to some college football on today's show. But again, the focus will be NFL and getting through every game on the Week 4 card. Last week was an incredible week for me. It was one of those weeks you don't plan for. You don't expect to have the results that I had each week during the season like I had last week. But when you go 20-7, 74% combined NFL and college football last weekend, boy, it feels good. It feels real good. It was a great weekend, obviously. College football was the weekend that was just out of this world. I mean, I've never had a single college football weekend as good as last weekend. 14-1 with my 15 plays in college football. 14-1. It was just one of those once-in-a-lifetime weekends where you had a lot of good reads. You had a lot of good handicaps. You know, you nailed a lot of things. You got a lot right. You also got some breaks. You also got some good luck and good fortune along the way. And I certainly did with a couple of those games. Look at FIU plus the points against Liberty. Liberty was like a yard or two away from punching in the touchdown that would have covered the number for them as 6.5, 7-point favorites in that game. But they ended up getting the first down at the 1 or 2 yard line. They were able to take a knee after that. And they were able to run out the clock. And, it's just those kind of, when you have a weekend like that, 14-1, you can't, a lot of it is you did a good job. Okay. No question. And I certainly think I did a good job last weekend with the college football card. But part of it is also, you do get some luck. You do get some good fortune along the way. There's no question. You don't put together that kind of weekend without that kind of, good fortune as well that goes your way. So, again, it was an unbelievable college weekend. It was 6-6 for me with NFL, but profitable because my biggest bet, the 2-unit top play, the 2-unit best bet, and I don't have many of those in all sports. I'm very selective with them, and it's paid off for me because I'm 4-0 with the 2-unit best bets. That's 4-0, by the way, in all sports combined since the restart, which was back in July, that I'm 4-0 with those 2-unit best bets. So that tells you right there, I'm very picky with those. I'm very selective with those. I don't throw them out willy-nilly. It's got to line up. It's got to make sense. There's a lot of check boxes. There's a lot of factors that have to go into it in order for it to be that big of a bet for me, a 2-unit best bet. And I'll tell you what, it was a sweat. That game drove me nuts. I was just very, very anxious the whole time. And the game I'm talking about is the Buffalo Bills on the money line against the LA Rams last week. That was my 2-unit best bet. That game drove me bonkers, but it got there. And I didn't think it was going to get there when the Bills completely blew that 28-3 lead. What the hell is it with 28-3 leads, by the way? Of course, that was the magic lead for the Atlanta Falcons a few years ago in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. And we know how the fuck that thing ended. It was a disaster. For the Falcons in the second half. They end up losing the Super Bowl. Thought that was deja vu all over again for the Buffalo Bills last Sunday against the LA Rams. Here they go, 28-3 lead. And then and I started getting that bad feeling very early. Like when that Josh Allen interception happened, which I thought was simultaneous possession between the receiver and the defensive back, and yet somehow they said that was an interception, Rams football. Are you kidding? What? So the rule changed all of a sudden? What are we doing? We're changing rules in the middle of a damn season? Is that what we're doing now, National Football League? I've been 35 years old. I've been watching football for 25 to 30 years. And all the time I've watched football, it doesn't matter, NFL, college, CFL, doesn't matter. When it's simultaneous catch, simultaneous possession, who gets possession of the football in that scenario? Let me hear. Who gets it? The offense. The receiver gets possession. It's always been that way, for years. And suddenly now, in that game last week, we're going to give simultaneous possession to the Rams. And you could see they got momentum from it. They drove right down the field. scored a touchdown. I'm like, uh-oh, this lead's no longer safe for the Buffalo Bills. It was at that moment, right then and there, that I sensed that things could get problematic here for the Buffalo Bills. And sure enough, it really did get worse for them. Defense wore down. Defense again had trouble getting stops. Late in that game, Jared Goff and the Rams offense caught fire, and Bills just couldn't do anything to stop it. And Sean McVay, by the way, let's give him credit. His play calling is really good. It's really good. It's been really good for 3 straight weeks now to start the season. Like different formations, jet sweeps, reverses, rolling the quarterback out, different formations to keep the opposing defensive coordinator off balance. He's doing some really funky, cool, innovative, creative stuff, in terms of scheming, game planning, and calling an NFL offense right now, Sean McVay. So we do have to give him a lot of credit as well for the part he played, in the LA Rams offense getting going and getting back into that football game. But still, it was just a very, very bad second half defensively for the Bills. And Josh Allen started to melt down with penalties and, backing up. And it seems like every time Aaron Donald and the Rams pressured him, he was backing up, and ended up, throwing the ball away or getting sacked. And somehow, some way, though, when the Buffalo Bills needed a drive after they blew the lead and fell behind 32-28, Josh Allen did it. A hell of a third down and 22 it was throw to Cole Beasley over the middle of the field. Found him right near the sticks, and he got there for a first down. And that's when I started to think, Bills can do this. Bills can pull this off. And sure enough, Josh Allen did with the touchdown drive, aided by a questionable PI call. But there was questionable calls against the Rams throughout that game as well that went in favor of the Rams, I should say. So I think it evened out in the end. But as nerve-wracking as that was, the Bills got it done. So that was my story about enduring the Rams-Bills game, but that was the best bet. It got there last week. Very happy about it. But it's no longer about what happened last week. Let's talk about what we can find this week in terms of winners on the NFL board. And we're going to start with this Thursday night classic. This is we go from a great showdown on Monday Night Football to an even better showdown tonight here on Thursday Night Football. I mean, New York Jets, Denver Broncos, battle of 0-3 teams. Doesn't get much better than this. I'm being facetious if you haven't noticed. New York Jets, about a 1-point favorite here in this game tonight against the Broncos. The total is right around 41 currently for this matchup between the Broncos and Jets, shaded to the under slightly. Look, this is a game. I'm going to be very, very blunt and quick with my analysis here because it's very simple for me. This is the easiest pass on the board this week, maybe even of this entire season for me. I want no part of this football game from a betting standpoint. I mean, you've got to be some kind of masochist. You've got to be some kind of just absolutely a glutton for punishment, just absolutely sick in the head, mentally sick, as Jim Morris Sr. said. Remember Jim Morris Sr., that press conference when the New Orleans Saints fans in the early 90s were booing the hell out of the starting quarterback and Jim Morris Sr. didn't like it? You got to be mentally sick in the head. And I've got to think that maybe you got to be mentally sick in the head to be betting this football game here tonight between the Broncos and the Jets. Here's the one thing I won't do. And I said this to the email subscribers of mine, because they were all asking me, you're sending out a play for this game, Ian? You're sending out a play for this game? And I said to them, the subscribers, I said to them, no, I'm not sending out a play for this game. But what I did say, and what I'm going to say right now as well, I will not lay points with the New York Jets. Not even maybe. Not even that I think so. And I am somewhat puzzled by the movement toward the Jets. Remember, the Broncos were opening the slight favorite here on the road, and now the New York Jets are favored in this game. What's to like about the Jets? I mean, the Jets have taken a lot of money. I mean, this was Denver 2.5. It's now the Jets 1.5. We're only now here on game day starting to see a little bit of Denver money come back the other way. What's the infatuation with the Jets here? They've looked like, in my power ratings right now, I have the New York Jets as the worst team in the NFL. The worst. They're worse than the Giants, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, any other bad team you can think of. I've got the Jets lower than all of them right now, and they deserve it. They are horrifically coached by Adam Gase, who I think is a lame duck at this point. I think he knows he's done. I think the players know he's done. And I don't think the players even give two shits about trying to play hard to save him. Does that look like a good situation to be laying points with the Jets? With a quarterback right now and Sam Darnold that looks like he's seeing ghosts again. 2 pick sixes last week against an Indianapolis secondary. An Indianapolis secondary, by the way, that's not a great lockdown, shutdown pass defense either by any stretch of the imagination. You see what Gardner Minshew and the Jaguars did to that Colts defense back in week 1? And Sam Darnold goes up against them and throws 2 pick sixes like they're throwing a bunch of riddles at him. This offense is broken. Sam Darnold's confidence is shot. The offensive line can't run block. They can't protect for Sam Darnold. He's running for his life half the time. The skill position talent, don't even go there. Le'Veon Bell is a broken down shell of what he used to be. The wide receiving core is not very good to begin with. And now they're injury riddled beyond belief. Who's going to suit up at receiver tonight for the Jets? Who? Is Jamison Crowder even going to be available for this damn football game tonight? Like, really? Who's going to play? Who are you going to rely on? Who's Sam Darnold going to say, you know what? This guy's going to make a big play for me in the passing game. Who's going to do it? Crowder's questionable at best. Brashad Perriman's already out. Chris Hogan, questionable. He's banged up. You're going to rely on Braxton Berrios, a rookie out of Miami, and Josh Malone? That's what you got? That's what you got. That's the receiving core that you've got to hang your hat on in an 0-3 must-win game at home for Sam Darnold with a bad O-line to boot and not much of a running game. You've got LaMichael Pirine and an aging dinosaur in Frank Gore. That's what you're looking at running back tonight for the Jets. And wide receiver, I mean, it's a mash unit. And Denzel Mims, actually, I kind of like from Baylor. He's got some talent. He's got good speed, good on the perimeter, and he's out too. So this is just an absolute mess waiting to happen right now for the Denver Broncos at the offensive end of the field. Offensive side of the football. I have no clue what they're going to be doing here tonight in this game. Pie Guy in the chat saying, what about the under? Yeah, I mean, the problem is it's 41. And the problem is, and I'm going to actually get to this before I get to the Sunday card, the little totals discussion, because obviously everybody knows overs have been the bet to make so far in the first 3 weeks. And I'll give you some stats regarding that in just a second. Yeah, I would lean under. And certainly, and I said this as well in my email to everybody, at this number, it's Denver or nothing. And I just decided, you know what? I'm choosing nothing because the Broncos have their own injuries. They already lost Von Miller. The defensive line is banged up. Jarrell Casey's a big loss for them. I mean, Jarrell Casey was brought in here after a very, very good year with Tennessee last year. He was expected to be a difference maker on this defense this year, already injured and banged up. I mean, it's absolutely, to me, not an ideal situation for Denver either, and we saw their offensive line get whipped last week. But the problem is the Jets aren't getting any pressure with their defensive front either. So, you got a Denver offensive line that's having trouble. You've got a Jets team that can't get pressure. So who's going to win that battle? To me, it's a coin flip. To me, it's guesswork. And the point of betting is take yourself out of betting games and situations where it's guesswork. All right. Because long term, if you're just going to bet these coin flips, bet these 50-50 results, it's not going to be profitable and winning long term. So it's a small lean, and I mean the smallest of leans for me to Denver at +1. I'm certainly more interested in Denver at a slight underdog price than the Jets at a small favorite price. That's absolutely insane to me that the Jets are favored over anybody right now. But again, Denver's got their own issues. They're on the road on a short week with now a first-time ever starting quarterback in Brett Ripon. And I saw Brett Ripon play a lot at Boise State. He's got some talent, but he also declined, I thought, as his career went along at Boise State. Started staring down receivers, started making too many bad throws, and now he's got to go on the road for his first start, short week, short amount of prep time. That's not something I'm in love with from a betting situation either. So Yeah, for me, it's a slightest of leans to Denver and possibly the under as well. But yeah, it's a game clearly I'm staying away from, no question. Let's go to Sunday. Let's go to something better. But before we get to Sunday's card, I'm going to throw out some totals numbers at you that I think are worth talking about here going into this week. I mean, obviously, overs this season are 29, 18, and 1 through the first 3 weeks. Could be 29 and 19 as well, depending on what number you got the Baltimore Kansas City total on Monday night, because some people, if you had the over, you could have pushed with it because it was 54. It was 54 and a half as well at other spots. So it was either a push or a loss with the over, and it was probably either a push or a win with the under. So it just depends on what number you had for the Ravens-Chiefs game on Monday night. But overall, you're looking at 29, 18, and 1 to the over, or 29 and 19 to the over in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. So I was fascinated because we know each week 1 was more overs than unders. Week 2 was more overs than unders. Week 3 was again more overs than unders. Looking at 9 and 6 or 9-5 and 9-6 and 1 or 9 and 7 overall with over under in week 3. So I went back and looked, and I did a lot of calculations and a lot of number crunching here, and wanted to see what the average total for NFL games was for each of the first 4 weeks. And I posted this on Twitter as well at Bobano earlier this week. The week 1 average total was 45.4. So the average total of week 1 NFL games was 45.4. That's the lined total, the average total for that week. The week 2 average total was 46.2. The week 3 average total was 48.0. And this week, going into week 4, the average total of all these games is 50.1. So we've seen the average total in week 1, 45.4, in week 2, 46.2, in week 3, 48, and in this week, week 4, 50.1. So we've seen a gradual, steady rise in the average total in NFL games week by week this season. The average number of points per game scored in NFL games this season is 50.9. That's the average number of points. So obviously, we've seen a lot of games get into the 50s. That's not a real big surprise that through the first 3 weeks of the season, we're looking at 50.9 points per game on average this season. So now the question is this now maybe week 4 coming up going to be the sign of a pendulum swing and a tipping point to where maybe finally we're going to see maybe some more unders than overs after seeing more overs than unders in each of the first 3 weeks? Because you look at it, the average total in week 1 was 45.4. That means that in week 1, if you compare the 45.4 average total of week 1 to the average number of points scored per game so far this season, which is 50.9, you had about 5.5 points of value betting over the total, because the average point total was 50.9, week 1 average total 45.4. You had a good 5+ points of value with overs. Week 2, the value dissipates a little bit, only 4.9 or 4.7 points of value to the over, because the average total in week 2 was 46.2 to go to, if you compare that to the 50.9 average points scored per game. Week 3 average total was 48. So now all of a sudden only 2.9 points of value if you compare that week 3 average total of 48 to the average number of points scored per game this season, which is 50.9. And now you look at the week 4 totals going into this week, the average total 50.1. All of a sudden now, it's like they started here, average total with the points per game, and now the average total is just, and it's moving on up, moving on up, moving on up. Now all of a sudden, 0.8 points of value, comparing the week 4 average total going into this weekend at 50.1 with the 50.9 overall average points scored per game so far this season. So it's a great thing to look at. It really is, to really break this down well and be able to see it, that, the totals are being adjusted now. And after 45.4 was the week 1 average total, 50.1 is the week 4 average total here. So odds makers are starting to realize, we've seen a lot of points. We've seen a lot of scoring, and it's easy to understand why. I mean, without preseason, with a limited training camp, tackling is bad. Open field tackling has been about as poor as I've ever seen to begin an NFL season, and we've seen that on full display so far. That's a factor in the higher scoring games. The fact that the road teams and the road quarterbacks and the road offenses can communicate clearly, audibly, with no problem with crowd noise at the line of scrimmage, can change calls, can audible, can do all of that stuff without any sort of crowd noise or crowd distraction. That has absolutely led to better offense, particularly from the road teams. So, the home teams would always, be able to have that lack of crowd noise because the crowd's always silent and quiet when their team has the ball. But now that's the case for both teams. Both teams are easily able to change call plays at the line, audible, do all that stuff. Quarterbacks can communicate with their O-linemen and their receivers without any difficulty at all. And that's also led to, I think, an uptick in offense. And another factor is the number of penalties we're seeing, especially defensive penalties. Seeing a lot of pass interference. We're seeing a lot of defensive holding. We're seeing a lot more illegal contact. I thought illegal contact for the longest time was only a CFL penalty because it felt like I pretty much only saw illegal contact being called in CFL games. I didn't even know you got it very often in the NFL. Now, all of a sudden, here this season in the NFL, you're seeing illegal contact being called left and right on these defenses. So that's playing a factor. Offensive holding, for some reason, is not being called. I can't figure it out. Like, offensive line are obviously more in sync. I get it because there's no noise to distract them. I understand why that is. But to see such a precipitous drop in offensive holding penalties this year, and if you look at any of the numbers, you see it's an enormous drop with the offensive holding penalties so far this season compared to previous seasons. It's really a sign that maybe the referees are just, I don't know, they're not influenced by crowd noise as much, or who knows, but offensive holding penalties are way down. It's hard to put your finger on why that is, other than I think the offensive line's just got that ability to be more in concerto, be more in sync because of the factors around them. There's no distractions. There's no crowd noise to really, and nobody's confused anymore. Nobody can't hear what their teammate or the quarterback is saying. So I think you've got offensive lines that are all of a sudden doing a better job blocking and open and pass protecting. So those are, to me, the big key reasons why we've seen such an increase in scoring. It's the lack of crowd noise. The road teams, road offenses and quarterbacks have no problem communicating. You've got bad tackling from a lack of proper training camp and preseason. And then, of course, you've got the increase in defensive penalties, holding and defensive holding and PI and illegal contact. And you've got a decrease in offensive holding penalties. I think you put all of that together, and that's exactly why we're seeing the huge number of points. Now, the question is this the week where we finally see a tipping point and the unders start to cash in? Because these totals are starting to get up there. But you've still got to handicap the game, and you can't put a blanket statement, on, well, you know what, the totals, this is the highest average total so far this season in any week, 50.1. I'm going to bet everything under. You can't do that. You got to nothing. You can't can't throw a blanket statement around every game and every situation. You've got to play it case by case, game by game, matchup by matchup. Matchups dictate, what kind of game flow you're going to see. Offenses are going to have the better of it. Defenses are going to have the better of it. It's never an across-the-board scenario for me. So for me, it's still going to be game by game we handicap, and game by game we see if a game is going to be high scoring, lower scoring, or otherwise. So just some totals discussion that I thought was definitely worth mentioning here as we get into the games. Let's get into Sunday now in the NFL. Let's get to it. We'll start at the top of the card, rotation order. Indianapolis Colts, Chicago Bears. Indy -2 favorites on the road, 43 the total in this game. Interesting matchup here with the Colts and the Bears. The Bears, obviously the big news is Nick Foles in, Mitch Trubisky out. He was pulled last week against the Atlanta Falcons, and that was a big part in Chicago's comeback. And you got to give Nick Foles credit. with coming in cold, coming in unexpected. Trubisky wasn't moving the team in the first half. He comes in the second half, 188 yards. Okay, the completion rate wasn't spectacular, 16 for 29. You'd like to see a little bit better completion rate than that, but 3 touchdowns, and now Chicago 3-0 on the season. So you got to give them credit coming back. Now you give them some credit for the win because it's not easy to come back and beat a team in the NFL, but you also don't give them too much credit because the king of the choke job, the king of the collapse is the Atlanta Falcons under Dan Quinn. And now that is 2 weeks in a row, the Atlanta Falcons have somehow coughed up a big lead and lost a football game. Happened again to them. So good on Chicago for getting that win, no question. I'm still a little bit concerned about this team at the defensive end of on the defensive side of the football. They haven't been the same good Chicago defense this year. They've let teams move the ball against them so far this season. That could be a little bit of a concern for me here against the Indianapolis Colts. What are we going to get from Indy here? The Colts have played 3 teams with a combined 1-8 record, so far this season. It has not been a great start for them. You could say the same thing about Chicago. But with Nick Foles coming back, you could tell the team had a little more enthusiasm, excitement. They really, and that's actually when their defense really started to dig in. And I think when you're a defense and you've got I think at least a solid, if not a good defense in Chicago, although again, at times to me, they haven't looked like it this year. When you see your offense just sputter, 3-0, Trubisky just not moving the offense, not moving the football, that wears on you mentally as a defense. We're busting our tails out here. And unfortunately, the offense can't move the football, and we're back on the field again 2 minutes later. That wears on you eventually. They started to see Nick Foles move the football, put up points for the Bears, and as soon as he came into the game and as soon as he started to move that offense, all of a sudden, the Chicago defense is getting stops, getting sacks on Matt Ryan last week, forcing turnovers, and playing better. And I think just that little boost of having Nick Foles go out there and finally make something happen on offense gave the whole team a boost last week against the Atlanta Falcons. So very interesting to see how this one goes here. Definitely all seemed hopeless for Chicago, but they found a way to get the win. The Colts again just destroy the Jets, but how good is that? It's going to be interesting to see. Their offensive line's been good. I do have to say that. Rivers has had time, clean pocket most of the season. I know he's got a deal now with Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, Akeem Hicks. Not going to be easy. The thing with Rivers, too, that I've liked, and I think what's going to bode well for him in this matchup is, he's been able to get rid of the ball quickly. That's definitely helped him going into this game, and that should help him going into this game against an aggressive Bears front. It's a fascinating game. At the current number, we've got Chicago as a slight home dog. I guess I'd lean slightly to Chicago at home as a dog because I do think now this is the first official start for Nick Foles. I think there's definitely a sign of this team getting a little bit of a emotional boost, a lift that, hey, we're 3-0, and now we've got a quarterback that we think is going to be in a better position to move the football for us offensively. So it's a game that it's a game I'm fascinated to watch. It's one that don't have the strongest betting opinion on, but I would lean at this current price to the Bears. I honestly thought they could have been a 1-point favorite here in this game. So at +2 as a home underdog, I'm very much leaning in that direction, but it's probably a game I'm going to stay off of when it's all said and done. A lot to figure out. I think, to be honest with you, whoever wins this game might be a bet against team next week because they feasted on the week so far, both of these teams, and they might be a little bit overvalued in the betting markets going into week 5 following this win. So that's basically what I'll say right here. I'm probably not betting this game, lean Bears, but more than anything, maybe look to bet against the winner of this game next week with their next opponent. Moving on, New Orleans, Detroit. New Orleans 4-point favorites on the road, 54 the total in this game. There's a bunch of games that I bet early in the week over the total, concerned that there might be some upward movement. We have seen these totals just continue to be bet up in a lot of situations week by week. This one stayed pretty close to 54 throughout the week, but I'm still going to go over the total, and I'm not going to be just completely sold on Detroit's defense finally being back and finally being good based on what I saw last week against Arizona. They did play well, but that was also a lot of Kyler Murray not playing well. Kyler Murray missing open receivers. Kyler Murray just not having the same kind of game he had for Arizona in the first 2 weeks. There were plays to be made, and he missed some stuff. Kyler Murray in the passing game. He missed some things that he did not miss in the first 2 weeks for Arizona against San Fran and Washington. It was definitely a lot different from him. There is still no pass rush to be had for the most part from this Lions defense. There haven't been necessarily all that good against the run so far. And obviously when you see what Alvin Kamara did for the Saints, even in a losing effort against Green Bay last week, you got to believe that's a concern for the Detroit defense. So Saints should move the ball and have success doing so here in this game. I think the exact same thing for Detroit. I actually think their offense is pretty capable now with Kenny Golladay back. That sure helps to go with Amendola and Marvin Jones. It's a pretty good receiving core now with Golladay back. And TJ Hawkinson's been excellent as well. I've been impressed with the Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson duo at running back. I mean, Adrian Peterson's looked solid, running the football. I mean, Father Time does not look like it doesn't look like it's knocked on Adrian Peterson's door just yet. I think he's had a solid start to the season. And this Saints defense, look, the Las Vegas performance, losing 34-24, and I was on the Saints last week, and I got that one wrong. I thought that was a one-off, that the Saints defense was still an elite defense. They just had a bad night against Las Vegas, had penalties, didn't get pressure, had trouble against the run. It was everything against Las Vegas. I'm like, you know what? Still I think a great defense. At least I think a great defense. Just had one of those nights. Well, one of those nights became two of those nights because the same shit they did against Vegas defensively, they did it again against Green Bay. There was no pass rush, nothing at all from the front seven. The secondary just got shredded, got picked apart by Aaron Rodgers. Even the ground game got going a little bit for the Packers, but really it was through the air. And Detroit's certainly got the weapons to make you pay the price through the air. And more than anything, the last two games defensively for New Orleans, penalties, terrible penalties, undisciplined penalties, pass interference, defensive holding, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, really everything from this New Orleans Saints defense. And it's given the opposing offense free yards each and every time. So that's now 2 games in a row they've looked bad on defense. They've looked poor. They've given up big plays. They've taken way too many penalties. That was supposed to get cleaned up against Las Vegas. You were supposed to stop that, put a pin in it for that Green Bay game on Sunday night. They didn't do it. And now I'm a little bit worried about that Saints defense moving forward. Maybe they're not as good as I thought they were. And I know the sentiment on Twitter was, I thought this was an elite Saints defense. What the hell happened? What's gone on here these last couple of weeks? I can't argue with that. That's not been a good Saints defense the last couple of weeks. So going to have to see how they bounce back here, but it's not going to be easy. I think, you know what they say, one bad game from a unit, maybe that's just a one-off. You could correct your mistakes. Now you have 2 bad games in a row on defense. It becomes a pattern. And that's the issue here. Michael Thomas, last I checked, he's got the potential to return here. And obviously we know how much Drew Brees needs him in the passing game. He's the guy he counts on more than anyone. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to come back here for this football game here on Sunday. But nevertheless, I do think, again, now back-to-back overs with New Orleans. In fact, New Orleans is 3-0 to the over so far this season. All 3 Saints games have gone over the total. And that's definitely where I'm leaning here in this one with the Saints and Lions. Of course, the game's in Detroit, no weather issues. You're inside the dome, no fans. Everybody's going to be able to hear and communicate at the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, I definitely think we'll see some points scored here with the Saints and the Lions and look over the total. Not to mention that, but still some injuries on defense as well for these Saints with Alonzo and Marcus Davenport. Janoris Jenkins questionable, second starter in the secondary for them. So there's all of a sudden some injury concerns for them. Michael Thomas, Again, with the left high ankle sprain, it hasn't been ruled out yet, but still potential he might come back. So that's definitely an injury to keep your eye on moving forward here for the Saints going into this game on Sunday against the Lions. All right, let's move on. Arizona, Carolina. We've got Arizona 3-point road favorites, total minus 170. I like Arizona now that it's 3. I mean, I think when it was 3.5, 4 on the Cardinals as a road favorite earlier in the week, I was a little bit more hesitant. But now that it's you can lay a field goal, even with some juice at minus 120 in some spots, I think Arizona minus 3 is the play. I still believe in this team. Yeah, bad loss against Detroit, but guess what? You're not going to go 16 or very rarely are you going to go 16-0 in the NFL. It was just a bad game for Arizona. Correctable mistakes, penalties. Kyler Murray wasn't as accurate as he's been the last couple of weeks. These are all things that I believe that the Arizona Cardinals can correct. I think they're the better of these two teams. I know Carolina went into LA last week. Very impressive what they were able to do. But again, they had some film on Justin Herbert because it was his second game starting at quarterback for the LA Chargers. I think that was a defensive advantage for them, and they took advantage of it, and the defense was good against the Chargers last week. Teddy Bridgewater and the offense did enough, and that's the one thing I like about Carolina. I think their offense has got the potential to be decent. Teddy Bridgewater, we saw what he did in place of Drew Brees last year. They've got weapons for sure to be able to throw the football on this Carolina Panthers team. With Robbie Anderson was a great get in the offseason from the Jets. DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, even without Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis ran the football well in his absence last week for Carolina. So I like their offense, but I don't like their defense a whole lot. It played well last week, but again, they forced some turnovers. Chargers did move the ball, and then they stubbed their toe multiple times going up against this Arizona team. And the weakest part of that Carolina defense is their secondary. And now that secondary for the Panthers has to match up against Hopkins, Kirk, who might come back after missing last week against Detroit, Larry Fitzgerald, Andy Isabella. What did I say about Andy Isabella last week? I said he's going to fill in for Christian Kirk just fine. He's a very good receiver. He knows the routes. He is already showed he's made some big plays last year with Kyler Murray. That they'd still be able to be okay at wide receiver with him in there, and they showed they could against Detroit. So very interesting to see how Carolina, their pass defense, which to me isn't very good, handles this Arizona team. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for them. So I like Arizona here, -3 in this one as road chalk. And again, I know it's the early start for the team traveling east, but Las Vegas got it done against Carolina in week 1. They won by 4. I could see that. I don't think they'll blow out Carolina, but win by 4, win by 6, win by a touchdown. Yeah, I think that's doable for Arizona. And if you read the quotes from Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, there's a lot of frustration and anger with the way they played last week against Detroit. I think it's a good bounce back situation for what I think is the better of the two teams. So for me, it's Arizona -3. I also like this one over the total as well. Again, it's up there at 51.5. But again, I think Carolina, I looked at them as an over team coming into the season. I still think that with an offense that's better than their defense. They do play a little bit of pace as well with Joe Brady now calling plays. He's increased the tempo a little bit with that Panthers offense. And you also get, tempo with Arizona. In terms of seconds per snap, they're one of the fastest in the NFL. So you're going to get some probably more plays run and snapped at the line of scrimmage from both teams. There'll be a little bit more tempo than you get in an average NFL game. So I do think that game goes over the total as well. Jacksonville, Cincinnati. We've got Cincinnati 3-point favorites, 49.5 the total here between the Jaguars and the Bengals. Interesting matchup here. Two capable offenses, I should say, between these two teams. Cincinnati, I know they've had a tough time in terms of putting wins on the board, but they've been scrappy so far. They lost on a last-second missed field goal against the Chargers, a good Chargers team in week 1. They lost by 5 points against Cleveland, in week 2. And then in week 3, last week, they tie Philadelphia in that game that ends in a tie in overtime last week, 23-23. You got to give the Bengals credit. They're competing. I don't think they're very good. I don't think their defense is very good. Their offensive line's been, suspect as well. They definitely miss a couple of key cogs as well in terms of their skill position group. The one they really miss is CJ Uzama. He was really starting to come on at the tight end spot. Uzoma was a guy that was really starting to develop a nice little relationship and chemistry with Joe Burrow. And now all of a sudden he's injured, but you still got Green. You've still got Boyd. T. Higgins, I think, has shown flashes as well early in the season. Joe Mixon's run the football pretty hard as well for the Bengals. And if you saw Jacksonville on defense last week, it was awful. I mean, they couldn't stop Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Miami Dolphins last Thursday night. Just receivers running wide open. Myles Gaskin had a big game running the football against them. Just awful defense from Jacksonville. And Jacksonville's defense has been bad each game. Indy moved the ball. Tennessee moved the ball. Miami moved the ball against the Jaguar defense with a ton of success in each of the first 3 weeks. I think this is a game where Joe Burrow can finally flex his muscles and say, you know what, I'm winging the ball around and I'm going to have success. And this is a matchup where you look at Cincinnati's offensive line is absolutely its suspect. Their ability to pass protect for Burrow, it's been shaky at best. It's been below average, no question. Jacksonville's not getting a pass rush. And when you look at Cincy, they played a good Chargers defense week 1. They played Philadelphia last week, who still got a capable enough defense, especially their defensive line. That's the strength of the Eagles, And then the other game they played was Cleveland, with Myles Garrett and company, who are capable enough of getting pressure. So you played at least, I would say, 3 average to good to great defensive lines the first 3 weeks, Cincinnati. Jacksonville's not that. Jacksonville is not even an average defensive line. They don't get any pressure on anybody. So this is an opportunity, I think, for Burrow and the Bengals to get going. I think they win this game. I really do. I'm definitely leaning on Cincy. I just don't know if I'm crazy about laying a field goal with them. You know what I mean? Like, they're still a winless team. In the first 3 weeks, they're underdogs. They're getting a good amount of points. Now, all of a sudden, they're 3-point favorites. And Jacksonville does have more time to prepare coming off the Thursday night game and long-term ATS, the team that has had extra time off the Thursday night game going to next Sunday sometimes has an edge and is sometimes a decent bet. That's my one reservation for pulling the trigger on Cincinnati, but I don't want Jacksonville here. It would be Bengals or nothing. And I like what Joe Burrow says after every game. And he said it after each of the 2 losses and even the tie last week. He said, tie feels like a loss to me. That's what he said after the game in the post-game press conference. A tie feels like a loss to me. It's not good enough. This is a quotes of a guy that cares, is passionate about winning, wants to win, wants to be good, wants the team to be good. And that means something. And Cincinnati comes into this game thinking, we got a chance to win this game now. And with Burrow and everything about Burrow, if you read every quote about him and every press conference he's had this season with the Bengals, pregame, postgame, or on a practice day, it's all about winning for him. And I think now he sees a beatable opponent and a winnable game on the other side. So it's Cincinnati or pass for me with this matchup. And this is another one where the total's gone up. The total's gone way up. This total opened as low as 44.5. It's now 49. So we've seen 4.5 point move up on this total in terms of the over. I think it's warranted. I trust the offenses of these two teams more than the defenses. So over the total, definitely the move in that direction makes a ton of sense to me. 49.5 even in some spots. So a huge, huge move up in the total with that Jaguar-Bengal game on Sunday. Cleveland Browns. Speaking of Ohio, we go from one Ohio team to the next. Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys, Dallas 4.5 point favorites. 56 the total in this game. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there's another game I've got interest over the total. You look at Dallas, that defense can't stop anybody. They are a horrific defense right now, the Dallas Cowboys. That's an issue for me going into this game here against the Cleveland Browns. I mean, you look at the Cleveland offense. I mean, the injury concerns on that side of the ball are brutal. They're missing 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks, 2 of their top 3 linebackers. None of them confirmed a return for this game on Sunday. Two of the top 3 corners, including Awuzie, 2 of the top 3 linebackers. They were already without Van Der Esch prior to last week. Now 2 of their top 3 linebackers possibly out. And Russell Wilson just had fun torching that team. Just torched them. Just absolutely embarrassed Dallas's defense. And to me, this is not a scheme thing. This is an injury thing. This is a talent thing right now with Dallas's defense. They don't have the personnel to match up on defense right now. They don't. They weren't a great defense coming into the season when everybody's fully healthy. And now they've got cornerback secondary cluster injuries, linebacker cluster injuries, the defensive line. Again, DeMarcus Lawrence is not having the impact they paid him to make along the defensive line. It's just a mess right now. This, in theory, should be a game where Baker Mayfield and the Browns have success. This should be a game where Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, Odell Beckham, these guys should have a big game in the passing game for the Browns here, because this secondary is just a mash unit, and it was not even all that good when they're fully healthy. The one thing that I keep looking at this, because I also like Cleveland here. I like Cleveland quite a bit in this game, plus the points against Dallas here. You can't lay points with a bad team, or certainly a bad defense anyway. Dallas does have a good offense, but a bad, lousy, pathetic defense. And that's what and an injury-riddled defense. That's what Dallas has right now. However, Cleveland on the road coming, and I'm still betting Cleveland. I am, because to me, getting 4.5, even 5 points in some spots with the Cleveland Browns here is a good take in my opinion. Cleveland is 0-7 straight up in ATS, on the road in their last 7 road games coming into this game, losing by an average of 14 points per game. That does bother me. Like, they have had these instances where it looks like, hey, this should be a game where they go on the road and they play pretty well, and instead they lay an egg, and they don't. So the road issues are concerning for me. It'll be interesting to see if the Cleveland Browns can overcome that. But I think in theory, this is a game that they should be able to have success moving the football, because I don't think Dallas has a great opportunity to be able to stop them going into this game. On the flip side, you look at it from a Dallas offensive perspective, they should have success too, because we know Cleveland's had some injuries as well defensively. Cornerback early in the season, they had some concerns. And we know Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, they're starting to CeeDee Lamb is really impressing me through the first 3 games for Dallas, the rookie from Oklahoma. He's done very well. And it's good. And I think they should be able to have some success here against the Browns. They're missing still, a secondary that's still a little bit banged up, although they're a little bit more healthier than they were. It's going to be interesting to see if Dallas is able to keep the pass rush off Cleveland, because I do think Cleveland could probably bring a little bit better pass rush than Seattle. Tyron Smith looks like he's might be out again. Lyle Collins is a guy that hasn't played yet this season. They miss him badly as well, Dallas, on the offensive line. So yeah, but their offense has been very good. Their offense has been good. They've been able to move the ball, put up points, even with a couple of their key O-linemen out due to injury. I just think this is a game, though, that Cleveland, they got a few more edges. Dallas is in a situation where I don't trust them laying. Look at what has happened to Dallas. They lost to the Rams in week 1. They need the mother of all miracle comebacks against Atlanta, including an onside kick recovery to beat the Falcons. And then you look at last week against Seattle, just, couldn't get a stop against the Seahawks. That close, they should be 0-3 straight up right now. And they are 0-3 against the spread, so far this season, the Dallas Cowboys. So, I'm going to dare them to have to cover this 4.5, 5. I think Cleveland's the way to go in this game, and as well lean to the over at 56. High number, but it's high for a reason. We've seen Dallas the last 2 weeks, 79 points with the game against Atlanta, got into the 60s last week. I think this has potential to get into the 60s as well. Minnesota and Houston, this game is going forward. We know Tennessee had the COVID outbreak, 9 players testing positive, and we know Minnesota was Tennessee's opponent last weekend. So there was concern that would put this game in jeopardy, but it looks like it's going to get played. Houston 4.5 point favorites, 54.5 the total. Another game I'm interested in the over, even at a high 54.5. Minnesota's defense. Whatever you thought Minnesota, whatever you have seen Minnesota defensively the last few years and say, you know what, it's been a pretty good defensive team the last few years. That's not this team anymore. They are horrendous defensively. Horrendous. That's the best word I have for it. There's no pass rush anymore. Danielle Hunter hasn't played yet this year. Everson Griffin, of course, left in the offseason. The secondary, forget it. I mean, it's terrible. It's a young secondary. Xavier Rhodes is completely, his career is in shambles, this guy, Xavier Rhodes. For a guy that we thought was an upper echelon cornerback at one point in his career, that's no longer the case right now for this Minnesota team. It's just an absolute mess. It's a disaster in all facets for the Minnesota Vikings on defense. I'm not sure it's going to get better either. I mean, that's now the concern moving forward with this team is the defense even capable of improving at this point in time? And I'm not so sure it is. I'm really not. I mean, we're looking at basically a Vikings team that is struggling so badly in all facets of defense right now, with lacking a pass rush, with not being able to cover receivers one-on-one down the field. It's just absolutely a brutal situation right now for a guy that I know prides himself on the defensive side of the football, Mike Zimmer. This has got to be just, depressing as hell for him. You see a defense that can't stop anything right now. Look at the way Ryan Tannehill and the Titans moved the football up and down the field last week against them and getting the win. The good news for Minnesota is Houston's defense is not very good. Houston's defense has struggled. Look at Pittsburgh. They did whatever they wanted in the second half. They're not getting much of a pass rush. J.J. Watt is just not the impact player he was. They had a good secondary for a few years, some pretty good corners. Now you're not seeing that really come through for the Texans right now either. I mean, this should be an opportunity here for Minnesota's offense to get going. Again, though, the concern for Minnesota, if you're going to back them, they've had their practice halted this week, practice sessions interrupted. Is that going to impact their performance here in this game? I do like the total. I want nothing to do with the side in this game. You will not at this point of the season catch me laying 4.5 points with Bill O'Brien and this Houston Texans team. And all they've done is find ways to lose each of the first 3 weeks of the season. Now, granted, not many teams have played a tougher first 3-week schedule than Houston, Baltimore, Kansas City, Pittsburgh. Pretty tough. I get it. But I'm not laying 4.5 points with Houston here. And I don't trust Minnesota and their defense to bet them. I don't like that they've, had their practices, a couple of them canceled because of the ties to the Tennessee Titans who have had the COVID outbreak. So, yeah, this is a pure stay away game for me from a side perspective. But I do have some interest over the total here between the Vikings and the Texans. Next up, Seattle, Miami. We've got Seattle 6.5-point favorites on the road, 54 the total. Seattle's another over team. I mean, this is just we're in that stretch of games right now from Saints Lions down to this one where I'm interested in betting over the total each of these games. And it's not because, again, of the 29-19 overrun this season. It is really more than anything, more of a matchup thing. I really do believe these are good offensive matchups here. Say what you will about Miami's defense. It's not good, and it's going to get absolutely carved up here by Seattle, especially if they don't get Byron Jones back in the secondary. The one bit of criticism you could give Gardner Minshew is he's not a great deep ball thrower. So he couldn't necessarily, take advantage of all the injuries in the secondary for Miami last week that obviously Russell Wilson could here in this game. So Byron Jones, if he's out again, that's trouble for the Miami Dolphins. The defensive lines had concerns as well in terms of being able to get a consistent pass rush, plus the safety as well. Fidelum for the Dolphins, he's questionable. So you could be seeing another shorthanded secondary here for the Miami Dolphins going into this game. Seattle should pick them apart, have the potential to. You do worry that now with Seattle just flying high, playing great, are they complacent? Are they, go through the motions a little bit? Now you're going to the East Coast playing this Dolphins team, coming off a barn burner, America's game of the week on Fox last week against Dallas. You do worry about that a little bit, that they're just a little bit flat for this game. This is not certainly a spot that I'm looking to lay 6.5 with Seattle, but I don't trust Miami defensively to stop them. But on the flip side, you look at Seattle's defense. That is a bad, struggling, injury-riddled defense right now as well. They haven't stopped anybody. I mean, Cam Newton and the Patriots move the ball up and down the field. And you look at these injuries on the defensive side of the football now for the Seattle Seahawks. It is alarming, and it's getting worse, not better, by the week. Bruce Irvin already on IR to begin the season. We knew that. Quentin Dunbar, questionable with a knee injury. Jordan Brooks, linebacker, suffered an MCL sprain. He's out. And the big one, Jamal Adams, that got him from the New York Jets in the offseason. He had a groin strain against Dallas. He had to leave the game. He's questionable right now for this game against Miami. So you could be looking at a mash unit Seattle defense here for this game against Miami. And look, I'm not one that shies away from making Ryan Fitzpatrick jokes. I've said Shitzpatrick and Pickpatrick, and I've had every name in the book regarding this guy and the fact that he can look so good and then look so awful at other times. But he's going to keep doing what he does, and that's sling the football around, chuck it up in the air, try to make some plays. And he's even not scared to run the football. He will make plays with his legs if the pocket collapses as well. So I think Miami can have some offensive success here in this game. Is their skill position talent group great? No, it's not. But they've still got Devontae Parker, who was healthy enough to play last week. Isaiah Ford made some plays. Mike Gesicki's had a great year at the tight end spot so far. I mean, they got guys that can make plays. The weather's a concern as well. Last I checked, there's maybe some wind and a chance of rain in Miami for this game, but the weather's even going to be halfway decent. It is difficult for me to envision this game not getting over a total of 54 points between the Seahawks and the Dolphins. That's certainly the bet I'm interested in for that one. Chargers and Buccaneers. We've got Tampa Bay, 7-point favorites, 42.5 the total in this one. Interesting game here between these two teams. Of course, Justin Herbert has started each of the last 2 weeks for the LA Chargers. We'll have to see how he's done here. We've seen some good and some bad from Herbert. It's what you'd expect, right? From a rookie quarterback making his first NFL starts. He's had some good moments. He was particularly good against Kansas City. And then, unfortunately, made some bad mistakes against Carolina. Interception in the red zone. That's a no-no. Saw that from Herbert last week against the Panthers. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares in this one. The one thing that I worry about for Herbert in this game, Tampa Bay's defensive line is pretty fierce. It really is. And that's going to be a challenge for the Chargers with their offensive line, which was upgraded in the offseason, the Chargers offensive line. But again, they've still got a couple of injuries there on that O-line going into this game. This is going to be a good challenge for them because they're going up against a group of players that can get a pass rush here on this Tampa Bay team, with Levante David and company. That is a group that is capable of collapsing the pocket. So a worrisome matchup, I think, for the Chargers offensively here in this game. Tom Brady and the Bucs, a good game against Denver last week offensively, but they didn't necessarily light it up against a Denver team that was losing some players left and right along the defensive line in that game. And now you're facing a Chargers team that their strength is the defense. I don't know if Tom Brady is necessarily going to be moving the football up and down the field here at will against this LA Chargers defense. I actually lean to the under in this game. This is one of the unders that I do like here this week. The total here is around 42.5. I lean in that. It's pretty low, but I think, Chargers are going to want to do what a lot of teams do against Brady, control the ball, run the football a lot, especially with Herbert against Tampa Bay. They don't want him in pass rush, third and long situations where that Tampa Bay pass rush can tee off. I think it's really going to be a time of possession type of offensive approach that the Chargers take in this game. So I do lean to the under, but boy, I'd like the under a lot more if we get word that both Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram can return from injury for the Chargers in this game. Because let's be honest, that is two integral pieces, important pass rushers for this Chargers team. when you're going up against Tom Brady, who, he's got some guile, he's got some ability to sometimes evade a rush, but he doesn't have the same ability to do it now that he did 5 or 10 years ago. You'd really love to see both of your premier pass rushers, Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa, on the field if you're the LA Chargers in a matchup like this. So keeping an eye on their status going into this game is very important, but I do lean to the under. I don't have much on the side here. I don't know if I want to lay 7 here with Tampa Bay, but again, with Herbert and the Chargers going West Coast to East Coast on the road, early start, rookie quarterback, offensive line issues against Tampa Bay defensive front that's pretty good. This could be a spot where Tampa Bay maybe is able to win this game by a touchdown or more. So I'd lean definitely to the Bucs. I don't want LA in this spot, but 7, I don't want to lay a full 7. It's just a lean to the Bucs and a lean under the total. Baltimore, Washington. Baltimore 13-point road favorites, 45 the total in this one between the Ravens and the Washington football team. There's no way I'm betting against Baltimore in this spot. And I know it's a short week for them. They played Monday night against Kansas City, but you hear that John Harbaugh, you hear Mark Andrews, you hear Lamar Jackson after that game seething, not happy, not impressed with their performance last week against the Kansas City Chiefs in a game they clearly had circled. Now you could really look at this one of two ways. You could say let down because they put a lot into that Chiefs game at home against the defending Super Bowl champions. They wanted that game in a big way, didn't get it done. Or they flat here for the lowly Washington football team on the road. He ran the ball well, Jackson, but his passing was not good. The receivers like Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown, and Mark Andrews, and dropping passes they don't normally drop. It was just a sloppy offensive performance from the Baltimore Ravens. And yeah, they got going a little bit in the second half, but it was still not the kind of game you would want from them. It's going to be interesting to see if the Ravens can respond here. Like Washington right now, I kind of liked some parts of their defense coming into this season, especially their defensive line. Their defensive line is the strength of the Washington team for sure, but now they're getting some injuries there. Chase Young, who's already shown glimpses of being a really good pass rusher in this league. He left last week's game to injury against Cleveland. Matt Ioannidis has been ruled out for the entire year. Young out, and already some injuries popping up on that D-line. That's a big-time concern against Lamar Jackson, who with time can still make throws and certainly with time can take off with the football. And guess what? The Washington team, when you're facing a mobile quarterback like Lamar Jackson, you need a linebacking core you can count on. A pretty good linebacking core. Spy the quarterback, make the right reads. Do I drop back in pass coverage? Do I make sure Lamar Jackson doesn't keep the ball and keep an eye on him? Washington's not one of those teams with a good linebacking core. And it's a worry for me. It's a worry that this is a matchup that Lamar and the Ravens offense, after not necessarily being thrilled with the way they played against the Kansas City Chiefs, that they might be able to have their way here offensively against Washington. Dwayne Haskins, is just not playing well right now. The Cleveland game was not good either for Dwayne Haskins. It was multiple interceptions, not reading the defense properly. And Ron Rivera is already hinting that the leash is short on Dwayne Haskins right now. He's got to show some development. He's got to show some improvement, or else there could be a change right now, or there could be a change very soon at the quarterback position, and we might see Kyle Allen or Alex Smith as the quarterback. I think they would go to Allen first. I mean, Alex Smith, it's such a delicate situation with him. I mean, the injury that Alex Smith suffered, ended his career and almost paralyzed the guy, amputated him. That's how significant the injury was to Alex Smith. So I would think that if they make a quarterback change, Washington, it would be Kyle Allen first before Alex Smith. But the bottom line is Ron Rivera is already growing frustrated with Dwayne Haskins, and we're just not seeing that kind of progression so far from him at the quarterback spot. I get a sense this could get ugly for Washington here. Normally, if a team is motivated to beat a bottom feeder and fired up and focused to beat a bottom feeder, they'll often just absolutely beat the tar out of them. And I get the sense this could be one of those spots for Baltimore. It's pricey. I get it. Like, I think my power rating only had Baltimore minus 12 in this game, and they're laying minus 13, even more than that. So it's not a bargain by any stretch of the imagination, but Baltimore's probably got a chance to win by 2 touchdowns or more. I don't want this home underdog. No way. It'd be Baltimore or nothing. I think the better bet might be first half. Get a better number on the Ravens early in the game, come out strong, and then if they get up by a big lead second half, maybe they take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit. But maybe Baltimore first half is the best way to look when it comes to that game. All right, those are the 1 o'clock games out of the way. We're down to the 4 p.m. Eastern games, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football to wrap things up. I'm going to skip Pittsburgh, Tennessee, because that game's been postponed. No need to talk about it now. New York Giants, LA Rams. LA Rams, 13-point favorites, 48 the total. You won't be seeing me. This is just like with the Washington game a moment ago. It's a double-digit dog that I don't want. I don't want the Giants. No way. The Giants get absolutely bombed by San Francisco, who've got half their roster on the IR right now, injured, and yet they absolutely get destroyed, non-competitive. And Daniel Jones there's another guy getting worse, not better. Turnovers, fumbling the football. Offensive line certainly played a part in it. Receivers dropping the ball. Giants just don't look in sync at all offensively. Joe Judge has already got, Matt Patricia and Charlie Weiss and all these failed Bill Belichick pupils that to think that we're good. And Josh McDaniels, go on down the list. All the failed pupils of Bill Belichick that have thought, you know what, we've learned from the master. We can be an NFL head coach and we can have success doing it. None of these guys have, and it's already starting to look like Joe Judge is going to be another in the long list of failed head coaching projects that once worked on Bill Belichick's coaching staff. Ill-prepared, penalties, the whole bit. Giants defense, again, shredded by Nick Mullins. Are you kidding? Nick Mullins for the 49ers last week was just absolutely did whatever he wanted, throwing the football. They ran the football with success, even with an offensive line that's significantly depleted. I don't know what you say about the Giants last week other than embarrassing is what it was for them. And that's exactly the way that game was for the New York Giants. Like when you look at the Giants offensively here, you look at their offense, the Giants first. Let's start there. 5 starters out on defense for San Francisco, and you can't still, and you post 9 points. It's a ridiculous loss. It's an embarrassing loss. It's humiliating. It's pathetic. It's like this is not a professional NFL team on offense here. That a team with the amount of injuries and depletion on defense that San Francisco had, that was able to hold them to 9 points. Absolutely brutal. Darius Slayton, he's the only receiver making plays right now. And here's the problem. You're going up now against Jalen Ramsey of the Rams in this game. That's a big problem. So where's Jones going to turn to? Golden Tate, who doesn't look like he's all that good right now and over the hill a little bit, started the season on the injury list. Evan Ingram, who's, one game he's good, the next game he's terrible, dropping passes. Where do you go for Daniel Jones here in this game? And by the way, if you watched the Rams last week against the Bills, and I think they're going to use this kind of philosophy here as well, because I thought they sat back in the first half against Josh Allen and the Bills offense. They were too passive. They didn't unleash the pass rush. They weren't aggressive. They didn't blitz as much. I think they're going to blitz the hell out of Daniel Jones here. It's a bad offensive line. It's a turnover-prone quarterback. Let's force this guy into mistakes. Let's do it with Aaron Donald leading the way with that pass rush. Let's force him into mistakes here and really make this a long day for him. Rams back home too, of course, after back-to-back games on the East Coast. Yeah, it's square as hell, but I don't want this dog. If this is a game that I'm pulling the trigger on something, it's the LA Rams laying the big number. Their offense their offense looks good. Jared Goff looks comfortable. He made one bad interception last week, but other than that, he looked fine. They should be able to move the football here in this game. I think they get confidence, believe it or not, that they were down 28-3 last week and still almost came back to want to win that football game. Goff struggles with a heavy pass rush. There's no pass rush right now from this New York Giants team. He'll have time. Robert Woods will have a big day. Cooper Kupp will have a big day. Tyler Higbee, who has become one of Goff's biggest weapons in the passing game, he'll have a big game. I think this is another one where maybe you split it up first half, full game on the LA Rams. I think they're ticked off that they lost to Buffalo last week. That dubious call late in the game kind of upset them a little bit as well. This is definitely, I think, a situation where the Buffalo or sort of the LA Rams definitely kind of a get well, get right game against the New York Giants, who looked absolutely hideous last week. You talk about coaching edges. McVay against Joe Judge, really? That's what we're looking at here in this game. McVay against Joe Judge. That's our coaching matchup. Wow. Talk about one-sided. Yeah, it's Rams. It's lay the points with the Rams or pass for me in this game between the Giants and Rams. All right, on we go. New England, Kansas City, showdown in the late window, 4:25 p.m. Eastern time. We've got New England 7-point favorites, touchdown road favorites here. The total 52 and a half in this game, the total with the Patriots and Chiefs. Not a game I have a strong opinion on. Look, if you want to bet against Kansas City, go for it. Like, I understand they're laying a touchdown here against the mighty Patriots and Bill Belichick, who've looked pretty solid so far this season. But you're not going to see me betting against a Kansas City team that's 13-0 straight up, 12-1 against the spread their last 13 games dating back to last year. Not going to see me do that. Like, it's not necessary to bet against, the best team in the NFL that once again proved it. Monday night in Baltimore, Patrick Mahomes was unstoppable for that Ravens defense. The throws he's making, rolling out, scrambling and throwing and twisting his body and throwing the other way against his body and just throwing pinpoint passes in those spots. Unbelievable quarterback play from Patrick Mahomes, again, all season, but especially that game on Monday night against the Ravens. The fact that he's under pressure, Baltimore blitzes him, he gets rid of it and throws a brilliant deep ball touch pass to McCole Hardman right before halftime on Monday night. He's got it going right now. And the Kansas City Chiefs have it going, and the Kansas City Chiefs have a defense now. I wasn't convinced they had it 2 years ago when they lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship. Even last year, their defense was good at times, bad at times, but it made plays when they had to. It definitely got better last year, that defense. Now I think they're even better this year. They contained the Ravens and Lamar Jackson for much of that game. The pass rush from Chris Jones and company got home. I mean, Kansas City's got a better defense now. And, of course, you got Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, head coach and OC for this Chiefs team. Just marvelous with their play calling, their play design, their scheming, their game planning on offense. That's not a team that's just, there's better things to do with my bankroll in the NFL than find a reason to bet against the best team in the NFL, defending Super Bowl champions that are 13-0 straight up, 12-1 against the spread. That being said, here's why I'm not on Kansas City. It is an inflated number. You're off an enormous, showdown win against Baltimore. You're playing on a short week here against the Patriots. You get one less day of prep for Belichick, Cam Newton, and company. That is a concern for me, and I'm going to give the Patriots some credit. They played well. Last week, though, what does concern me is they won against the Raiders because the defense was flat out terrific last week for the Patriots. But that was not a great game by Cam Newton. He made a couple of mistakes. Thought he regressed a little bit throwing the football. He made a lot of plays running the football last week, but I thought he regressed a little bit in terms of ability to throw the football. We'll see if he can get it back going. This is a really, really great game to watch. I can't wait. But, you're talking about New England. Think about how many times the last 5-10 years throughout the Brady-Belichick era in New England, how many times have we seen New England a touchdown underdog? Or just an underdog in general. Now a touchdown underdog. +7, getting a full touchdown here as an underdog in this game. How many times have we seen it? Not much. And this is rarefied point spread air for them. And I went back and looked, how are the Patriots? And let's keep in mind, New England, by the way, other than getting stopped on the goal line by Seattle on Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago, that's how close they are from 3-0, straight up and against the spread to start the season. Patriots are 23-13-1 against the spread as a dog since 2013, 2003, I should say. So that's the majority of Belichick being here with this New England team. So again, 23-13-1 ATS as a dog since 2003. With a lot of teams, I couldn't care less about that stat. I couldn't give two shits about that stat. 23-13-1 against the spread as a dog since 2003. With a lot of teams, I wouldn't give a squat about that stat because it's different players, different coaches, different coaching staffs, different eras. At least with this stat, New England, 23-13-1 against the spread as an underdog since 2003. At least this is the same head coach the whole time. So I take this stat as a stat that's a little bit more meaningful than it would be with maybe other teams that have had a million coaches. Like if you tell me the New York Jets are 23-13-1 against the spread since 2003 as an underdog, I'm going to say, who the fuck cares? Who the hell cares? They've had 13 head coaches, 14 head coaches, it feels like, over the last 17 years. Different coaches, different, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean the same. This one does mean a little bit more. So, again, New England's been good. The question is now, are they ready to, compete with Kansas City and beat Kansas City good on the road as well here in Arrowhead? And I know Arrowhead Stadium it's not full capacity, but at least they do have some fans for their home games so far this season. But it's a fascinating game. I'm looking forward to it. But from a betting standpoint, it's not a game I'm involved in, and I don't expect to be when it's all said and done. But a good one to watch for sure. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how it goes. But again, I don't want to bet against New England getting a full touchdown. But again, Kansas City 13-0 straight up, 12-1 against the spread. That's the run for them, their last 13 games. You really want to bet against that too? Be my guest. I just don't want to. So can make cases for both sides, so I left that game alone. Buffalo Bills, Las Vegas Raiders. Buffalo, 3-point favorites, 53 the total after the Bills gave me the heart attack of a lifetime last week against the LA Rams. Going to be interesting to see. Really, really interesting spot here because the Bills, that is a huge statement, dominating first half, blow the lead, but still rally back and win the game in the end against the Rams. Now you're going on the road against the Raiders, and now you're laying 3. Look, I got my Buffalo money last week. I'm thrilled about it. It was my 2-unit best bet. I'm not in a rush to come back to the Bills here in this game, especially because their defense is not putting 4 good quarters of football together in any one game. They've struggled at times on the defensive side of the football in each of the first 3 weeks, but especially the last 2. I mean, Miami moved the ball well in the second half. 2 weeks in a row, the second half defense for the Bills has been gashed. And of course, Goff and the Rams moved the football up and down at will against them. Now, the good news for the Bills is they had some linebacker injuries going into last week. Both of those guys played, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, which was big for them. It really did make a difference. But where's the pass rush gone? You need more from Ed Oliver. You need more from Jerry Hughes along that defensive line for the Bills. The secondary even, which I think is a really good secondary led by Trey White. They let some big plays in the passing game go for Jared Goff in the second half. So the Bills defense has had their issues. It's actually kind of funny and strange that after the last couple of years where the defense has carried the Bills, you could say the offense has kind of carried them the last couple of weeks. I don't know if that's going to be that way forever, but I really do believe that the Bills here offensively, Josh Allen's definitely improved. There's no doubt. His ability to throw the deep ball now compared to last season and 2 seasons ago, it has improved by leaps and bounds. No doubt, no question. You just watch. He's got more confidence, letting it fly. And now he's got receivers that he can feel confident to let it fly to down the field. When you talk about Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley. Look at the way Gabriel Davis, the rookie a receiver out of Central Florida, stepped up for them last week. I mean, he's got a lot of weapons now. He's made some incredible strides. He's making plays with his legs like he always does with his mobility, but also his arm is as accurate and strong as I've seen it. And this Vegas secondary is going to be eaten up, I think, by Buffalo. Absolutely eaten up. So the secondary's not good. They have a rookie cornerback there in Damon Arnett, who's been awful. They picked on him constantly, opposing quarterbacks. They have injuries at linebacker. That's an issue for the Raiders as well. Devin Singletary is a great running back, pass catcher, can run the football. They didn't even have Zach Moss last week. The Bills, their rookie out of Utah, due to injury. There's a chance he might be able to come back as well. This should be a good matchup for the Bills offense. Like the Rams struggled with the Bills offense. There's no question Las Vegas is probably going to have a tough time matching up with the Bills offense here. But Las Vegas's offense is not chopped liver. The Raiders have the potential. I think if this turns into a shootout, and I think it does, and the betting markets think this turns into a shootout too, because this total opened as low as 49.5 with the Bills and the Raiders. It's now all the way up to 53. So we've seen a 3.5 point move, and it's another total over that I agree with. I think it does go over the total this game. The Raiders can keep up. The Bills have not had that lockdown defense so far. Derek Carr and the Raiders, let's not forget, they hung 34 points in their one and only previous home game at Allegiant Stadium, their brand new home here in Las Vegas. They had an incredible game moving the football against the Saints. The key here with the Raiders is, can they get some offensive line help? They were down 2 key starting offensive linemen against the Patriots last week in that loss on the road. Trent Brown, though, might be back, left tackle. That would be enormous for the Raiders offensive line. Richie Incognito was another guy that was injured and didn't play last week. Could they get both of those guys back from injury? I think that's going to be significant in terms of just how well the Raiders offense does in this game against the Bills. But I definitely lean over the total. That's the one thing I'm looking at. I actually did bet over the total earlier this week. 51.5 is the number I got. So I didn't get the best number, but I've still got a number that's better than the 53 that we're seeing right now. I do think we get points in bunches here. Again, weather not a factor indoors in Las Vegas. I think the Bills can win this game, but from a spot perspective, big game against the Rams. You blew the lead, you hung on, you came back to win. Are they a little bit flat for this game? And the Raiders showed, the Raiders can beat New Orleans at home the way they did. They probably have a chance here against Buffalo as well, even though I think Buffalo is still the better of these two teams. And even with their struggles to put 4 consistent quarters together from the Bills defense, I still think their defense is better than Las Vegas. So again, that's why I think Buffalo is the better team. I think they win, but the spot's not good enough for me to want to back them here in this particular situation, laying 3 on the road after just a huge emotional roller coaster of a win last week against the LA Rams. All right, Sunday night football, Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 7-point favorites, 46 the total. This is a game that I want probably no part of. Look, people that bet San Francisco, it's been one-way money on San Fran here. 3.5. This thing opened 3.5 with San Francisco as home favorites, all the way up to a full touchdown now. 7-point favorites with them hosting this hapless Eagles team. I can't lay a touchdown now with San Francisco. If you bet them early, good on you. You got a good number. You've got some options. You can always hedge now or try to middle it with the Eagles. But now I'm not going to lay 7 with San Francisco here. Let's not forget, this is another spot that, 2 great road wins, 2 dominant road wins for the San Francisco Giants, albeit against the absolutely pathetic, embarrassing, hapless New York football teams, beating the Jets, beating the Giants on the road in back-to-back weeks for this 49ers team. Now you're back home. Now you're seeing family again, and now you're, hanging around with family members, friends, you get bills to pay, all the distractions now that you're back home in the Bay Area again. It's not a San Fran spot. I'm sorry. I've seen this play out before. You have 2 big games and dominant wins on the road in a row. Now you're going home, distractions galore, seeing family again. You're not, you had all that time bonding as a team when you're on the road, and they stayed on the road for 2 weeks. They didn't fly back to the Bay Area, to San Francisco between the 2 games on the road with the Jets and the Giants. Now, all of a sudden, that team camaraderie, everybody disbands. Everybody's going to their home, to their own families. Now you're hearing about what a great couple of games you played, and now you're laying a full touchdown at home, an inflated number. No, that's not what I call buy low on San Francisco. That's not what I call a tremendous point spread value with San Francisco in this spot. But can you get there with Philly at this point? I don't know if I can. if this thing pushes to 7.5, 8, maybe I get a little bit interested in Philadelphia, but it's not like the Eagles have been blown out either in a lot of games. Yeah, they lost to Washington. They had a bad game against Cincinnati or a tie game with Cincinnati last week. But the problem with Philadelphia is offensive line injuries. That's an issue for them. Carson Wentz talk about another quarterback regressing by the week and getting worse. Carson Wentz, he fits that description. I mean, it has not been pretty for the Philadelphia. I can't explain what's happening right now. I think I think they missed the hell out of Frank Reich. This offense for the Eagles has not been the same and has not been really anywhere as good since they had Frank Reich on the coaching staff. This has not been great display of offense and preparation for offense from Doug Peterson with this Eagles team. Not at all. It's just been bad play calling. What is with the play calling with the game on the line last week? Could you at least throw the football a couple of times? These draw plays right into the middle of the line from the 40-yard line. Do you realize you want to make the field goal to win the game? Give Jake Elliott a freaking chance, for crying out loud. Give him an opportunity, for Christ's sake. Get the ball beyond the 35 to the 30. Throw the ball every now and then. Try to win the game. Instead, they're running the football. It comes to fourth down, and then they decide, oh, you know what? He can make a 59-yard field goal. And then what do? What do? They take a false start penalty. I mean, you got to be shitting me. I mean, you must be kidding me that at that time of the game, you take a false start penalty, push you back 5 yards. It became a 60-plus yard field goal attempt. Doug Peterson says, no, we're just going to punt the ball, wave the white flag like losers, and we're going to settle for a tie with the Cincinnati Bengals at home. I mean, absolutely despicable display all around by the Philadelphia Eagles last week in that game. He's not seeing things clearly. He's not reading the defense well. His accuracy has gone way down. I know the receiving core is nothing to write home about for this Eagles team, and they've been banged up again. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. Are these guys ever going to get healthy and on the field and feeling good again? J.J. Arcega-Whiteside injured. Jalen Reagor, they got him in the draft last year. He's banged up as well. I mean, we're talking about two healthy receivers right now. Greg Ward, who's not even started his career as a quarterback with the Houston Cougars, in college. Now he's a converted receiver. And John Hightower. That's what we're looking at for receivers that are fully healthy. Everybody else is either on IR or is questionable and banged up to some degree on this Eagles receiving core right now. That's just not good. And the O-line's got injuries as well for this Philadelphia team. So that's why it's a tricky game. I don't love this spot one bit for the San Francisco 49ers going into this game. They have a ton of injury woes still, but the Eagles, they don't seem to have a lot of their injuries progressing to the point where we feel good about these guys playing on Sunday night. At least with the 49ers, looks like George Kittle's back this week. Deebo Samuel might play as well, boost the receiving core. It looks like Jimmy Garoppolo's still out, but Nick Mullins, you can say Giants and Jets, two pathetic teams, but he's played decent, played well, for the 49ers at the quarterback position, and if George Kittle's back, you better believe I'm looking at George Kittle props because this Eagle linebacking group is pathetic. They haven't been able to stop a tight end all year. You think back to Tyler Higbee's game against them when the Rams played the Eagles. He torched them, lit them up. They couldn't cover any tight end, including him. And now you got to go against probably the best tight end in the NFL. It's either him or Kelsey in terms of who's the best tight end in the NFL right now. The Eagles haven't been able to stop anybody at the tight end position all year. George Kittle's on track to play Sunday night against the Eagles. That is a loaded up in your sports betting account, loaded up over receptions, over receiving yards, George Kittle, and touchdown scoring prop, George Kittle as well, because this Eagles team is just hideous defensively with their linebacking core. And if you don't have a good linebacking core, you're going to get ripped apart by an opposing tight end, especially an elite tight end, the likes of George Kittle. So to me, it is absolutely it's a delicious matchup if you're the 49ers. You're just licking your chops at the thought of getting George Kittle back for this Eagles team that is just brutal covering a tight end. So look out for that come Sunday night. They are the one thing that the Eagles are still pretty decent at. Their defensive line's the one part of their defense that's pretty solid. The secondaries, they're where it's worse for them. At least the Eagles are decent against the run. And the 49ers are always a team with Shanahan that are committed to running the football. They like to have 50-50 balance in their offense, if not more running the football than throwing the football, especially now with Nick Mullins at quarterback. So that's something that could keep the Eagles hanging around a little bit in this football game, but it's tough. I still can't do it with Philadelphia here. Even getting a full touchdown, I need to see that they're getting a little bit healthier going into this game on Sunday night, and I'm not sure. There's just a lot of questionables to doubtfuls, and that's a concern, especially now that we're starting to see the San Francisco 49ers get a little bit healthier heading into this game potentially. So, yeah, it's a really, really, really tough game. I think if you bet San Fran 3.5, 4 early this week, great price. You probably are on the right side. You're probably going to get at least a San Fran win by 6 or 7 here. I just don't know if I want to lay the full touchdown now in this game against the Eagles, even for as big a shit show and a big and injury-riddled mess the Eagles are right now. I would also lean a little bit under the total, 46. Look, Eagles aren't an over team right now. Their offense looks broken. It looks like it's absolutely in shambles. Now they're going up against a better San Francisco defense. They've had their injuries, but the 49er defense has hung in there. They shut down the Giants. They shut down the Jets. And really, the Eagles' offense isn't a whole lot better than the Giants or Jets' offense right now. Honestly, seriously, I'm not joking. I'm not pussyfooting around and saying that, screwing around and just saying that for the hell of it. They're not much better offensively right now, the Eagles, than the Giants or the Jets, period. So I think this is a matchup where the 49ers can hang in there. The Eagles defensively, at least better against the run, can take away the greatest offensive strength that the 49ers have. So the under makes some sense to me in this game. Currently the total 46. Monday Night Football, to wrap it up, Atlanta, Green Bay 7.5-point favorites at Lambeau Field, 56.5 the total. That total opened as high as 58. It's now down to 56.5. So we've seen some under money come in. None of it's mine. And boy, Atlanta, you look at them. I mean, it's not even funny anymore. Actually, it kind of is. I will say that kind of is actually, but it's almost not even funny anymore what Atlanta's doing with these collapses and these blown leads and these choke jobs. I mean, it happened against Dallas. It happened against Chicago. We know the Super Bowl against New England years ago. We'll have to wait and see. The one thing for Atlanta though is if Dan Quinn doesn't commit to Todd Gurley running the football in this game, you need to fire that man. You need to make sure he doesn't live to see another game on the Atlanta Falcons sideline after Monday night if he does not commit here to Todd Gurley running the football. You have an abysmal, piss-poor Green Bay run defense. And at least even though they lost last week against Green Bay, Sean Payton at least said, we're going to run the football with Alvin Kamara. We're going to run the football with Latavius Murray. That's got to be your thought process if you're the Atlanta Falcons. Get Gurley going, get the run game going, because the Packers can't stop the run. They still can't. They couldn't in the playoffs last year when San Francisco, you know how bad it was for Green Bay in that game last year against San Francisco? They knew every play. San Francisco's running the football. They knew it was coming, and they still couldn't stop a damn thing on the ground against the 49ers in that game. And they're not really any better against the run so far this year. Todd Gurley, commit to that run game. You should be able to move the football here and take some pressure off Matt Ryan. I know you've got great receivers with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, although Jones questionable. Russell Gage, by the way, that's a big loss if he doesn't play. Russell Gage has played well at the receiving core as well for the Falcons this year. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to have their full complement of receivers available to them for this game on Monday night between the Packers and Falcons at Lambeau. That's what I should do, because I think if they run the football, and it's not always something Atlanta does consistently, but they should here based on the matchup. You should be able to have some success running the football here in this game against the Green Bay Packers defense. The problem though is, Gurley, again, they're trying to baby this guy. It's like he's wearing a bib. and he's like a little baby in the stroller right now. They're not giving him as many carries because they're worried to death. They're sick. They're just worried sick about his knees and the arthritic knees he's had that have just crippled his career, literally and figuratively, the last few years. That's the concern. It's like I can't buy, or I can't just absolutely rely fully on Atlanta doing the right thing here and running the football. Get the other running backs going if you're worried about how many touches and carries Gurley gets. Get Brian Hill involved. Get Ito Smith involved. Godry Ollison. Get all these other running backs on your depth chart involved. Find a way to run the football is what I'm saying here for the Atlanta Falcons against Green Bay. Green Bay's offense, unless they're asleep, and at least the last 3 weeks, unless the last 3 weeks are a complete mirage and a complete fraud. How do they not score on every possession in this game? Like, the Atlanta Falcon defense is not only not great, they're banged up like crazy. Let's look over the Atlanta injuries. It's not a pretty picture on defense. Darqueze Dennard out, Grady Jarrett out, questionable. Both of them Darqueze Dennard in the secondary, Grady Jarrett on the defensive line. Both of them questionable. Tack McKinley, defensive end, groin injury, questionable. Jordan Miller out. A.J. Terrell, huge loss in the secondary. Huge loss for A.J. Terrell for this game moving forward out indefinitely. I mean, it is another one of these teams with cluster injuries on the defensive side of the football. Now you're going up against Aaron Rodgers and company. That's trouble. And I thought Green Bay's offense would suffer a little bit without Devontae Adams because, I thought there was a huge drop-off with all the other receivers, with Tanyan and Lazard and Valdez-Scantling, but somehow, some way, Aaron Rodgers still makes it work. I mean, he shredded New Orleans, and that was without Devontae Adams, who's still battling the hamstring injury. His status is up in the air for Monday night. Again, we've still got several days before this game, but he's questionable. I think Green Bay can move the football against Atlanta regardless, but if they get Devontae Adams back as well against this hideous Atlanta defense, 40 points allowed to Dallas, into the 30s for the Chicago Bears. Think about that. That's the Bears with Trubisky and then Nick Foles replacing him last week. That just absolutely carved up this Atlanta team. Now you got to face Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. That's trouble in my mind. I'm just going to sit back and wait to see if this total drops further. And when it gets to the lowest number that I think it might, I will pull the trigger on the over here for Monday Night Football. Far as the side goes, if it gets down to 7, I'll have some Green Bay in my pocket. I will not back Atlanta. I know they've been in a lot of games. They fought the good fight. That's a lot of points to be giving a team that at least has been moderately competitive so far this season. But with all these injuries on defense and to me, it would be tricky. One thing that's a little concerning, though, and why I don't love laying 7.5 with Green Bay this week is, again, vulnerable against the run. And when you're that poor against the run, you have a tough time covering this kind of number. And you look, that could, and if the Falcons somehow, and they should commit, they should be just locked up for stupidity if they don't run the football in this game against Green Bay. But if somehow if they do run the football and commit to it, that might be enough for them to hang around getting this number. So I think the number's in a good spot. I can't take Atlanta. I don't know where their mental headspace is either. Come on, you think about it. I mean, the last 2 games were demoralizing. You had double-digit leads in both games, and you flat out coughed it up, spit the bit, whatever term you want to use, against Dallas and Chicago in back-to-back weeks. That can't be a confident team. That has to be a mentally fragile locker room right now. So there's absolutely no way I could trust Atlanta. It's a question of, do I really love laying 7.5 with Green Bay? I'm not so sure in this game. More than anything, I'm going to look over the total at the lowest number I can get. All right, there we go. A drink of water. That helps. We've gotten through the entire NFL Week 4 card, and I will leave you with some college football briefly, just a couple of minutes here on college before we finally wrap this show up. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, by the way. Great to have you watching us each week. A couple of college football games that piqued my interest. Memphis and SMU. We got Memphis 2-point favorites, 74 the total. Great AAC matchup here. I think there's a good case to be made for SMU in this game. They're a home underdog. I like what I see from their offense and Shane Buechele. And from a Memphis standpoint, you talk about having a season completely thrown off the rails. They've had the COVID-19 tests, the COVID-19 outbreaks. They haven't played since September the 5th against Arkansas State. So they haven't played a football game in almost a month. Their practice schedule has been altered. They've had canceled practices. They haven't had all of their guys on the field because of these COVID-19 outbreaks involving players on the Memphis team. And now you got to go on the road, face an SMU team that is chomping at the bit to play you after losing to Memphis last year on a nationally televised ABC game. I still respect Brady White. He's a great quarterback, but they don't have the same ground game. Kenneth Gainwell, the defense is still suspect, and now they're facing an SMU offense that can light it up. And with Shane Buechele and company, I think it's situationally it fits for SMU. The price is good. Memphis has dominated this series, but I think it's time for SMU to win. I kind of like them in that game. I'm also looking at the over in Arkansas, Mississippi State. I think that's just a dead nuts over team with Mike Leach, the coach, KJ Costello, the quarterback that went into LSU and ripped apart that LSU defense. Arkansas's got Felipe Franks, Florida transfer at quarterback, kind of struggled last week, but he was facing an elite Georgia defense. That ain't the Mississippi State defense. That's a work in progress for Mike Leach with that defense of the Bulldogs. So I think that's a high-scoring game. Quickly as well, what else am I looking at? South Carolina, Florida. I kind of like South Carolina plus points, believe it or not, and the over in that game. Florida's going to move the ball, no question. I mean, their offense looks great with Kyle Trask, great running game, great receiving core, excellent offensive line. South Carolina is going to have trouble getting stopped. South Carolina allowed 30-plus points to Tennessee, and Tennessee doesn't have the explosiveness that Florida has. Florida should move the ball. I'm impressed, though, with the South Carolina offense. Colin Hill, Colorado State transfer quarterback, and new OC Mike Bobo, who was the Colorado State head coach, is now the offensive coordinator with this South Carolina team. They showed a lot of continuity, cohesion. They looked like they were in sync. They looked a lot crisp for a new quarterback and new OC, but it's a quarterback and OC that were together at a different school, different program, Colorado State. So they didn't have that same, learning curve that sometimes you get in that situation. So I think it's a lot of points. And Florida's defense, they struggled with Ole Miss last week. I mean, they gave up some big plays. That's a lot of points to be laying with a defense that had a tough time last week. So the dog and the over are something I'm interested in with that game. Conversely, I'd mentioned Tennessee. They're laying 12.5 against Missouri. You go back and look at Tennessee as a home favorite, and especially as a double-digit home favorite. The results haven't been pretty against the spread. And now I know they've got a better team this year. Jarrett Guarantano looks like he's a solid quarterback. Defense looks better. That's a lot of points to be laying. And I think it's a coaching edge for Missouri. I like Eli Drinkwitz a lot better than Jeremy Pruitt in this coaching matchup. And I thought they hung in there against Alabama last week. Mighty Crimson Tide. It was a bad start for them, but I thought in the second half they played a lot better in that game against the Tide. I think their offense has some capability. It's just a Tennessee team that I right now do not trust laying 12.5 points against any conference opponent right now. So I think that line's inflated. I mean, Tennessee's just been a terrible favorite, especially a double-digit favorite over the years. Lean to Missouri a little bit there, plus the points. And kind of interested in Baylor, too, against West Virginia. West Virginia beat an Oklahoma State team outright as dogs, give them credit, on the road. They were without their quarterback. They had an offensive line that was mangled with injuries. All kinds of issues. Baylor, destroyed Kansas, and they still have Charlie Brewer, their quarterback, a good offense, a defense that, with Dave Aranda taking over as the head coach, there's a lot of new faces on defense, but he can flat out scheme and coordinate a defense. Dave Aranda showed it last year with LSU, with the Tigers, now the head coach here at Baylor. I think that number's a little bit short. I'd look at Baylor there against West Virginia in that game. And I'm kind of interested in Auburn, +7 against Georgia. Georgia's quarterback play looked awful last week. And for the first, they were trailing Arkansas 9-7 at halftime last week. An Arkansas team with a new head coach, new scheme, new quarterback in the transfer, Felipe Franks. Absolutely a situation where not to me, it's just not a spot I'm looking to lay 6.5, 7. And Auburn impressed me. I had Kentucky last week and lost with Kentucky. Uh, their offense looked good. Bo Nix looked more confident. He was willing to throw the ball more. The offensive line played better. They moved the ball against a good Kentucky defense. And what their defense did, think about all the defensive linemen they lost to the NFL. Their defensive line controlled the line of scrimmage against Terry Wilson and that Kentucky offense last week. I was impressed with Auburn. I didn't think they would play that well. They did, and I think they'll give Georgia a game on Saturday. And I'm leaning to the points there with the Auburn Tigers in that game. So that's some college football for Saturday. Some games that I'm leaning at. I haven't locked in as many bets yet for college as NFL. But that's what we're looking at for Saturday in college football. This show, as always, has gone longer than I anticipated, so it's time to wrap it up. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy right here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. And make sure you tune in live right here every Thursday, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time throughout the football season, breaking down every NFL game plus some college football right here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. We'll be back next Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, as Pub Sports Radio will once again present Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Have a great weekend. Good luck with all of your wagers in the NFL and college football, and I'll see you again right here next Thursday for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.